On a quiet Friday night in October 2025, the routine outside the Federal Correctional Institution Fairton was shattered. The air was thick with anticipation, as if everyone sensed something unusual was about to unfold. Guards exchanged glances, and the hum of security lights seemed louder than usual. Former U.S. Representative George Santos, who had been serving a 7-year sentence for a string of high-profile financial crimes, walked out a free man. His sudden release caught even some prison staff off guard, as word spread quickly through the facility. His release wasn't due to parole or a successful appeal, but rather a dramatic presidential commutation, signed by Donald Trump just hours earlier. The paperwork had arrived with a sense of urgency, bearing the unmistakable signature of the former president. Santos had served less than 3 months behind bars, a fraction of his original sentence, for crimes that had rocked the political world and left many questioning the integrity of public office. He emerged from the gates, looking visibly changed, older, perhaps more reflective, met by his lawyer and a handful of loyal supporters. News cameras flashed, capturing every second of this unexpected moment as reporters shouted questions into the night. Santos made no comment, his silence only deepening the sense of shock and disbelief that swept across the nation. For many, it was a moment that defied explanation. The commutation not only ended his prison term, but also erased his financial obligations to his victims, wiping away millions in restitution and leaving many feeling justice had not been served. The late-night timing seemed designed to minimize media attention, but by dawn, the story had exploded. Newsrooms buzzed with activity as journalists scrambled to piece together the details. Santos's sudden freedom became the top headline, igniting fierce debate about justice, presidential power, and the future of political accountability in America. It was more than a personal victory for Santos. It was a political earthquake, sending shockwaves through Washington and beyond. The questions it raised about justice, power, and the limits of presidential authority would dominate the national conversation for days to come. Before his legal troubles, George Santos was a political sensation, flipping a Long Island seat in 2022 with a story of immigrant grit and MAGA loyalty. But his biography quickly unraveled. His education, career, and charity work were all fabrications. The lies became a national scandal, embarrassing the GOP and fueling a federal investigation. Santos was indicted on 23 counts, including defrauding donors and stealing identities. He pleaded guilty to wire fraud and aggravated identity theft, admitting to using campaign funds for personal luxuries and fraudulently claiming COVID-19 benefits. In December 2023, he was expelled from Congress in a rare bipartisan move. By July 2025, he was sentenced to 87 months in prison and ordered to pay over $370,000 in restitution. His fall from grace seemed final until Trump's intervention. The story of Santos became a cautionary tale of ambition, deception, and political redemption. Presidential clemency is one of the most powerful and least restricted tools available to a president. It comes in 2 main forms: a pardon, which completely forgives a crime and erases its legal consequences, and a commutation, which reduces or eliminates a sentence, but leaves the conviction itself in place. This authority is granted by the Constitution and is not subject to review by Congress or the courts, making it a unique and sometimes controversial power. In the case of George Santos, Trump chose to commute his sentence. This meant Santos was freed from prison, but his felony convictions remained on his record. The commutation did not erase the fact that he had been found guilty, but it did dramatically change his future. Trump's commutation went even further than most. Not only did it end Santos's prison time, but it also erased his obligation to repay the victims of his crimes. This was an extraordinary step, as financial restitution is often seen as a way for offenders to make amends. The official White House document, posted online for the public to see, made it clear. Santos's prison term and restitution requirements were wiped away, effective immediately. There was no waiting period, no conditions, and no further review. With this single act, the legal process was brought to an abrupt end. All consequences, except for the conviction itself, were closed. The justice system's work was effectively halted. The decision was final and absolute, immune to any appeal or challenge. No court or official could reverse it, no matter how controversial it might be. For Santos, this was a dramatic reversal of fortune. He went from facing years behind bars and overwhelming debt to sudden, unexpected freedom. His life was changed in an instant, and his family and supporters celebrated his release. For the public, however, the commutation raised urgent and troubling questions about the meaning of justice and the true reach of presidential power. Many wondered if the system could be so easily bypassed. With a single signature, Trump overrode not only a judge's carefully considered sentence, but also the suffering and losses experienced by Santos's victims. The act was both sweeping and deeply personal in its impact. The commutation quickly became a flashpoint in the national debate over executive authority, sparking heated discussions about the limits of presidential power and the role of justice in American society. In the end, many were left to wonder, if justice can be undone with the stroke of a pen, what does that mean for the rule of law and the future of accountability in America? Trump wasted no time justifying his decision. On social media, he called Santos's sentence excessive and politically motivated, claiming the justice system targeted his supporters. Trump cited reports of Santos's alleged mistreatment in prison, including solitary confinement, to cast him as a victim. He described Santos as a rogue, acknowledging his dishonesty, but downplaying its severity. Trump's message blended empathy with political loyalty, framing the commutation as both mercy and a rebuke to a biased system. The move resonated with his base, reinforcing the narrative of persecution against conservatives. By freeing Santos, Trump sent a message: loyalty would be rewarded, even in the face of serious crimes. The commutation became a symbol of Trump's willingness to defy norms for his allies. It was a calculated political statement, not just an act of clemency. The groundwork for Santos's release was laid days earlier, when a public letter from prison appeared in a Long Island newspaper, catching the attention of both the media and political insiders. The letter was not just a plea for help, it was a carefully crafted message, designed to reach the one person who could change his fate. Santos bypassed traditional legal channels, choosing instead to appeal directly to Trump's sense of loyalty and his love of public spectacle. He knew that a private request might go unnoticed, but a public letter would make headlines and put pressure on Trump to respond. In the letter, Santos painted himself as a man seeking redemption, lavishing praise on Trump and aligning his plea with MAGA themes of forgiveness, second chances, and fighting injustice. He invoked the language of the movement, referencing redemption and forgiveness as core American values. The letter focused on his supposed transformation and unwavering loyalty, steering clear of any mention of his crimes or the controversies that led to his imprisonment. Instead, he emphasized his personal growth and commitment to the cause. Santos described the harsh realities of prison life, including long stretches in solitary confinement, to evoke sympathy and paint himself as a victim of a broken system. He detailed the emotional toll and isolation, hoping to humanize himself in the eyes of the public and Trump. By shifting the narrative from his past lies and scandals to his present suffering and supposed transformation, Santos aimed to win Trump's favor and the public's empathy, recasting himself as a man deserving of mercy. The letter was a calculated performance, public, emotional, and tailored for an audience of one. Every word was chosen to resonate with Trump's worldview and to create a spectacle that could not be ignored. In the end, it worked. Trump echoed these themes of loyalty, redemption, and injustice in his commutation announcement, using the letter as justification for his decision. Santos's appeal became the final act in a career defined by spectacle, manipulation, and a relentless pursuit of the spotlight. The letter gave Trump the perfect pretext to frame the commutation as an act of mercy for a loyal follower, cementing both men's reputations for turning controversy into opportunity. Santos's lawyer, Joseph Murray, quickly declared victory, calling the commutation a correction of a great injustice. He echoed the narrative of political persecution, arguing Santos's sentence was excessive and motivated by his Republican ties. Murray insisted the commutation was about fairness, not favoritism, and sought to shift debate from Santos's guilt to the fairness of his punishment. The statement was crafted for public consumption, appealing to those skeptical of the justice system. For Murray, it was a professional triumph. He'd freed a national pariah through legal maneuvering and public relations. The message reinforced the idea that presidential power could right perceived wrongs. The legal team's strategy had paid off spectacularly. Santos's commutation fits a pattern. Trump has repeatedly used clemency to benefit political allies and loyalists. Past recipients include Roger Stone, Michael Flynn, Rod Blagojevich, and Dinesh D'Souza, all connected to Trump or his base. Unlike the traditional process, Trump's clemency decisions often bypassed DOJ recommendations, focusing on loyalty and political symbolism. Critics argue this undermines the rule of law and rewards personal connections over justice. Supporters see it as Trump fighting a biased system and protecting conservatives from political prosecution. The message to allies is clear: loyalty can bring extraordinary rewards. For Trump's base, these acts reinforce his image as a fighter against the establishment. Santos's release is celebrated as another example of Trump standing by his own. The commutation is both a political tool and a signal to supporters. News of Santos's release triggered immediate outrage and disbelief. Media coverage focused on the erasure of his sentence and restitution, sparking debate about justice for his victims. Analysts called it a classic Trump move, provocative, strategic, and designed to dominate headlines. Critics, especially Democrats, condemned the commutation as an abuse of power and a blow to the rule of law. They argued it created a two-tiered justice system, one for the powerful, another for everyone else. The move was seen as further evidence of Trump's disregard for democratic norms. Legal experts debated the limits of presidential clemency and its impact on accountability. The Santos story shifted from scandal to a symbol of political escape from justice. It raised urgent questions about the state of American democracy in 2025. Santos's release forces Americans to confront tough questions about justice and power. Is it fair for a convicted felon to walk free while ordinary citizens serve full sentences? The commutation undermines deterrence, punishment, and restitution, leaving victims without justice. It highlights how presidential clemency can be wielded for political ends, not just mercy. The unchecked nature of this power raises concerns about balance between branches of government. Reform is difficult, but the debate is now unavoidable. Santos's case is a stark example of law, politics, and power colliding in a polarized nation. As the dust settles, Americans are left to ask, what does justice mean now, and who is truly accountable?